There we go. Thank you. I think we need to be recording because people have asked me in the past. So again, good morning, and welcome to the 2024 Legislative Conference of the League of Women Voters of Colorado. This annual event allows us to share some of our priorities with you, our shareholders, members, and friends, and learn from some of our partners about what's on the horizon. I hope some of you were able to tune in on this past Wednesday night. We hosted an educational event on the refugees coming in from Venezuela, who they are, why they're making this drastic and courageous decision to flee their homeland in search for a better life. The chaos, corruption, and massive inflation they're running from is a polar change from where Venezuela was only 25 years ago. It was a model democracy. It was the richest country in South America. It was stable. But in 1998, Hugo Chavez was elected president in a democratic election. And within 2 years, he began consolidating power, dismantling democratic systems, ignoring and overturning the will of the people, and stealing from the coffers. And today, Venezuela is considered an authoritarian regime, and its people are starving and fleeing. All this in 25 short years. We can't let this happen here. We've all heard the voices spewing anti-democratic ideals. We've seen restrictions on voting and elections being introduced in every state capital in our country, including right here in Colorado. We must work together to do what we do best, and that's empower our voters and defend democracy. Because what the League does, what you all do as supporters of the League of Women Voters, actively contributes to the health and well-being of our democracy. We do this by educating people on political issues and democratic values, by highlighting the importance of civic involvement, by reiterating the fact that democracies thrive on diversity and inclusion, by actually equipping folks with the tools they need for their own personal advocacy. You being here today is proof that you are a champion of democracy. And I'm asking you to keep it up and turn it up for 2024. To champion democracy is to safeguard democracy, and it's all hands on deck. Today, we have a great lineup of speakers who will tell us about champion democracy by combating disinformation, ensuring all eligible voters have access to the ballot, and by fighting for basic needs like comprehensive health care and decent, affordable housing. Then our action and advocacy team leaders will give you a look ahead at the 2024 session across the street at the Capitol. Our Legislative Action Committee is warmed up and already working hard. I hope and expect that you'll walk away from this conference with some new knowledge and tools to continue to champion democracy. I appreciate you all being here and your commitment. But let's get started. Our first segment is on combating myths and disinformation. We have 3 speakers from whom you can gather talking points to share far and wide. Our first speaker is Matt Crane, the Executive Director of Colorado County Clerks Association, who will tell us about the professionalism and dedication of our election workers. Matt, we really thank you for being here. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. It's nice to see you all virtually this morning, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about what our members have been going through and what the 2024 landscape looks like, and most importantly, how you all can help. And you guys have always been great partners to us, and we really appreciate that. I'm just going to share my slides here. Okay, can everybody see them okay? And I'll adjust it so it's full screen here. Okay, how's that? Better? Good? Okay, So it is unbelievable that here we are in 2024 and we are preparing for an election. But what's on a plate for election officials to have to prepare for and quite frankly worry about is far different than when I first started in elections back in 2020. And a lot of that is around disinformation and misinformation. So let's kind of define what each of those are to help set the conversation for today. There's three different types of misinformation or disinformation, if you will. The first is misinformation. This is information that's false, but it's not created or shared with the intention of causing harm. I like to think of, one of my crazy aunts who goes on Facebook and doesn't realize something isn't true and she shares it and she doesn't know, she didn't do any research. Then there's disinformation. This is something that is deliberately created to mislead or harm or manipulate a person, social group, organization, or a country. And then this last one here, malinformation. This is the one that is particularly dangerous and which has had such a catastrophic effect on the election community over the last 4 years. This is malinformation. This is when people take a shred of truth and then they take that shred of truth and create a narrative around it that's completely untrue. So think about the biggest example that comes to mind is do our voting systems connect to the internet? Well, they have components that would allow that if it was legal here in Colorado, but our systems are not connected. But these people say, oh, because they are connected, they have the ability to connect. That means they are connected. It means that people are hacking in and changing votes, the whole 9 yards. So that one is particularly dangerous. But this last point, I think, is really important for people to understand and to share. Our foreign and domestic threat actors use MDM campaigns to cause chaos, confusion, and division. These malign actors are seeking to interfere with and undermine our democratic institutions and national cohesiveness. So it's not bad enough that somebody would create a lie based on truth, but our enemies overseas and quite frankly domestic enemies as well will use that, will amplify those messages to help harm our republic and our institutions. And I don't think people realize that, especially when people don't go to trusted sources to get information. When they just blindly share things, they're doing the work of our foreign adversaries. Oops. It's impossible to talk about what's going on in Colorado without a quick review of what happened in Mesa County. A lot of times people, when you think of election disinformation, you think it's coming from outside and not actually election administrators. But unfortunately, election administrators we've seen here and in Georgia, other places, fall prey to the lies as well. So in Mesa, very quickly, we had a low information election official. She never truly studied our laws, our processes, our systems to know the checks that we have in place to ensure integrity. She never received her state certification, which was required. Poor management by she and her team led to high staff turnover. She was extremely partisan and publicly supported conspiracy theories, meaning she was an easy target for grifters and bad actors. And then there's something, I have to tell you, there's something strange about Colorado here. I love this state, but there are well-organized conspiracy theory groups here in Colorado that have gotten a start here. And a lot of the election mis and disinformation that we see happening across the country originates here. The Dominion disinformation started here in Colorado. These groups are very effective at spreading malinformation. They place incredible pressure on election officials to break the law. One of these groups, United States Election Integrity Plan, which is really ironic whenever I hear these folks put election integrity in their title. The people that started that group are now running Mike Lindell's Cause of America. So they've taken their efforts here and gone national with it. They're very well funded. And they continue, believe it or not, I know you believe it, they continue to spread mis and disinformation, malinformation. So as a result of what happened in Mesa County, the Clerks Association, all of our members, this was a unanimous effort, felt that it was important for citizens in Colorado to know, one, we don't approve of what happened in Mesa County, and it's not something that should happen again. So we worked at the legislature with the Secretary of State's office, with other partners on Senate Bill 22-153. The parts that we really pushed for were, one, the certification requirement. It used to be that an election official had to get certified to take all of these classes to get certified within 2 years of taking office or getting a job in elections. We said that's not good enough. people need to know their jobs before they do their jobs, which would, one, obviously increase the professionalism of our teams, but it would also inoculate them against mis and disinformation if they actually understand how this work happened. So currently there are 13 classes. The classes average anywhere from 2 to 4 hours in length. We have both online and in-person options. County clerks now must become certified within 6 months or before running their first election. This is huge. So you guys can have trust and confidence that all 64 county clerks going into this election cycle have been certified and have a better understanding of their jobs, which is especially important when a third of our folks are new. With the election in 2022, between some deciding not to run again, term limits, a third of our folks are new this year. And so this certification program is really important. And then continuing education classes must be taken. So you can't get a certification, sit back on your laurels and say that's enough. You have to continue to take these classes so that you can maintain your certification. Another thing that we pushed for, if a clerk does not get their certification, they can be disqualified as serving as the designated election official from in their county. So the election powers that are prescribed to them under the statute, they can have that stripped away if they don't do the proper due diligence to learn about their job and go through the certification program. Also, there's stronger penalties for election officials who break the law in the course of their work as election officials, where again, they can either first of all, we took it from misdemeanors to felonies. And then we also said, if you break the law, you can be removed as a designated election official there, up to and including not being able to run for these offices in the future. Again, the idea was, it was important for Colorado citizens to hear from clerk and recorders that what happened in Mesa County was not good and should never happen again. And we wanted to do our part to make sure that it didn't happen. Now, what are some of the other things we did? Obviously, Mesa County was a great learning experience for us, because it's not just citizens outside who sit on Twitter who are impacted by this. It is possible for election officials to be negatively impacted by this. So at the association level, we took on a much greater role in going out and if we hear about misinformation or malinformation, going and studying it and making sure that our members know what's true and what's not true. We also have a public component on our website, clerkandrecorder.org, where we have FAQs that can go down and talk about the different things that have been said out, online on social media. For instance, our voting systems have never been certified, or the voting system testing lab lost its certification. And so the Dominion voting system that was used in 2020 was never certified. That's a lie. That's not true. We explain that on our website, on our FAQs. And we're constantly going through this so that we can be updating it and trying to stay on top of the lies as best we can. Another thing we did, oops, I think I missed one. Oh, maybe I have to hand. So, okay, I'm gonna have to go back. Another thing we did, we started an election security update email for our members so that we could gather all of this information that we were getting about what's happening here in Colorado, or what do we know about what happened in Georgia or Antrim County, Michigan, or the cyber ninja fraud of an audit that was happening in Arizona, and pulling that information together and getting it to our clerks. Why is this important? Especially in our medium and small size counties, where they don't have an election staff like a Denver does, or like I did in Arapahoe. Our clerks in those medium and small size counties, they're not just running elections, they're also the person that you will probably meet at the DMV in that county, where they're actually the ones issuing license plates, or on the recording side of the shop, issuing marriage licenses. They are so busy and have so little bandwidth. It's not a fair expectation to say, okay, they're going to work these 12, 13-hour days, and then they have to go and do research online to try to figure out what is true and what's not true. Not just about Colorado, for heaven's sakes, but again, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, what was happening there. So we've, at the association level, we've been able to step in and fill the gap to provide our folks accurate information about what is going on. So that's a lot of what we've done in the past to get to this point. Now, unfortunately, this is not going away, as you guys know. Earlier this year, I think it was October of 2023, the new state GOP chairman said, if there's fraud in 2024, like there was in 2020, there's going to be civil war. Well, everything that he and his supporters have pushed out about the fraud in 2024 is not true. And any talk of civil war is obviously very irresponsible and very dangerous. So on December 8th, the association, the executive board of the association prepared and sent a letter to all elected officials in Colorado as a result of this and some of the other things that have been going on, pleading with them, saying your voices are needed now. We have heard from I and other Republican elected officials, clerks, have heard from members of the General Assembly or others, Republican elected officials saying, listen, thank you for what you're doing. We know what you're saying is true. We believe it. We just can't step up because essentially the mob or the cabal is going to come for us and primary us, run us out of office. And basically our message to those folks now is we appreciate your support behind the scenes. We now need it front and center. Stand with us on the front lines. And we've had a good response. Senator Byron Pelton from the Eastern Plains wrote a letter, an op-ed in the Denver Post supporting the clerks in his district. The Prowers County Board of County Commissioners sent a letter in support of their clerk. We expect to see more of those letters come through. So we've had great success by doing that. But it's now time for all the people who know the truth to stand up and speak the truth. A couple of other things that we're really pushing. The biggest mistake, and Neal will support me on this one, the biggest mistake that an election official can make is to say, our model, what we do is perfect. There's no room for improvement. We've never said that. We would never say that. Perfection is unattainable, but we keep striving for it every day, every year. And so we are leading the way at the association level on new policies to enhance transparency. The major thing we want to say is, yes, we think you can trust us, but we want to make it so you don't have to just rely on us. It's not just, hey, trust us and look the other way. So what are we working on? We are working on making ballot images and cast vote records. And for those of you who don't know what a cast vote record is, it's the report provided by the voting system that shows how the voting system interpreted every single vote on every single ballot that went through. We're working to make those available free and at no cost after each election. So if somebody wants to pull those down and spend their Friday night recounting the votes in their precinct, they will have the ability to do that. We're working on a signature verification audit, an approved audit, so that we can, one, identify any gaps that may be there in our signature verification process, but two, also have the data to go out and tell that supports our message to our citizens that our processes are working well. We're going to attack an approved audit around voter list maintenance and how we handle our voter registration lists. We're also working on a new platform for our members to help that goes beyond the state certification program to help teach and share best practices. And then one of the things that we're working on, where I hope we can have a few classes available before the general in November, is a Citizen Election Academy. We want to do a better job and be more present, helping teach citizens about how our elections work, so that they can have all of the truth, evidence, whatever they need, and they can go get it themselves, rather than going to some of these grifters and bad actors who are more than too happy to take their money from these people and lie from them. And ideally, if we can build this out to what we'd like to see, citizens would go through this election academy. It would include coursework, serving as an election judge, taking a tour of a facility. And then when they get through this process, they would be eligible to make more money as an election judge moving forward, which would help also replenish our work pipeline for election judges, hopefully, if they know that they can make more money if they meet these requirements. And then these people, when they go through, they can become ambassadors for us for the election process out in the community, where either they're at civic meetings or they're just talking to their neighbor. If they hear some misinformation, they can say, you know what, that's not true. Let me tell you what is true. And this is why I know it, because I've gone through this program. I've served as a judge. They can be great ambassadors for us in the community. Finally, very quickly as I end here, you guys, citizens, play perhaps the most important role in election integrity. What do I mean by that? Certainly when it comes to your own ballot, there are many steps that you can take to ensure that your election experience is secure and has integrity. One, go to govotecolorado.gov well before the election to make sure that your address is on file and it's the right address. That way you make sure the ballot gets to you at your house and doesn't get sent to a different house. If you haven't already, please sign up for Ballot Tracks. It's a great system that allows you to track your ballot throughout your life cycle. You can get texts, emails, phone calls with updates about, hey, your ballot's arrived at the post office. You should be receiving it soon. More importantly, when the county gets it for counting, you'll get a text that says, hey, Arapahoe County's received your ballot. You can have peace of mind to know that your ballot is safely and securely at the central count facility and will be processed. Understand important dates. What are the dates that are coming up? When are ballots mailed? If you want to vote in person, when do vote centers open? When do you have to have your ballot back by? If you want to vote in person, make sure that you have one of the acceptable forms of ID. I think right now in Colorado, there's 19 different forms of ID. Make sure you know which one and take it and be prepared so you don't get sent away or have to vote a provisional ballot. Take a tour of your county election facility. Most large counties do this. A number of our smaller counties do as well. Please go in, take a tour, see how these processes work, and ask questions. Contrary to what the grifters and bad actors say, it's not, we welcome questions. We want to help educate the public about what we do. And finally, join us in this fight to protect our elections, to work in these elections, and to push back on those who are trying to undermine our democracy. Sign up and be an election judge. There's so much disinformation out there about, when I was clerk, was I behind the curtain as the great and all-powerful election Oz, pulling the levers to determine who wins? Nothing could be further from the truth. It is our citizens who run and conduct our elections as election judges. It's your fellow league members. It's your church or synagogue members, your PTA members, soccer moms and dads, Elks Lodge members. These are the men and women who come together to verify eligibility on ballots, to do signature verification, to open ballots, to tabulate ballots, to audit our systems, which we can help, which helps show that our systems are working properly. It's our citizens who do this work. So please step up, join us, serve as election judges. I promise you it will be very rewarding work for you. On election night, when we're done, when you go home, especially on the presidential, you go home, you realize, holy moly, I just helped facilitate one of our greatest rights as Americans. Everybody can share in on that. Come join us and be an election judge. So with that, I know we have other speakers on the panel I look forward to hearing from and happy to answer any questions if there's time.
Great, thank you, Matt. One question we have is who wrote the curriculum and who runs the classes for your county clerk education?
That's a fantastic question. The curriculum is prepared by the Secretary of State's office. This is something that started back when Donetta Davidson was secretary back around 2005. And it's been continued under each secretary now, and it gets better as we learn more and better, not just content-wise, but better techniques for teaching. So that part is administered by the Secretary of State's office.
Excellent. Please be in touch about your Citizen Election Academy. I have a funny feeling we have a lot of willing guinea pigs here to try that out, myself included.
That would be great.
So thank you. Thank you, Matt. We'll continue to spread your message and support our election workers. We appreciate your work. My name is Beth Hendricks. I'm the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters. Thank you for being here. Next, we'll hear from Neal McBurnett, who's a member of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County and represents LWVCO on the Secretary of State's Bipartisan Election Task Force as an expert on election systems. He'll talk to us about why risk limiting audits are a really good idea. Neal, thanks for being here.
I think you need to unmute your audio.
Sorry about that. When you start sharing the screen, your mute button moves. And I'm also afraid that I'm not sharing this slide very well. So I think I need to go here and make one change to my...
I had a question for Matt Crane while Neal is working on these slides. I put it in the chat.
Can you see my slides now? I think I might still have that. Can you see the full slide?
Neal, we just see half your slide, or maybe the
Yeah.
upper left-hand corner.
So Oh, that's right. I have to actually apply this.
There we go.
Okay, so now you can see my slide. I'm so sorry about that. I'm talking about both risk limiting audits and this disinformation thing. And I want to put it in the context of evidence-based elections. So first of all, I want to just put a huge kudo out there for not just Matt, but all the Colorado election officials that I've been honored to get to collaborate with. They're the real deal. They work across party lines and they care about elections. And in that context, I just want to talk a little bit more about this notion of disinformation. There are lots of places that you hear, just as Matt was talking about, where you hear lines like, trust us, and we do everything perfectly, and there's no problem at all, and so on. And, I consider that in some sense a well-intentioned, but just not true. Elections really are hard. The people keep asking for more and more convenience and opportunities to vote in different ways, and that's really hard to do. So they're doing an amazing job on a tough deadline, and I think it's appropriate for them to say, we're doing the best job that we can, and we're presenting evidence of what we're doing, and you can come and watch us, and that's why you can trust the outcome. It's not just, gosh, I elected them, surely they're doing right, trust us. And Matt even brought up examples of people who have gone beyond the bounds of being trusted and so on. So my focus has always been to work with election officials and try to help them present evidence that that everything is happening right. So I'm going to start with risk limiting audits, which is something that I helped pioneer in Colorado. I worked with Matt to do that. And again, he's an example of someone who does his best to do a great job and recognizes that things can be improved. And that happened back in, when was it, Matt? 2013 or something, that we did some pilots in your county.
When we started your process,
a risk limiting audit basically says, there's a lot of detail here I won't go into, but it basically says, let's look at the paper ballots and let's look at what we reported about those paper ballots and let's see if they match. And the more ballots you look at and the more comparisons you do with the results that you presented originally, the more confidence that you have. Now, unless you do that for all the ballots, there's still a little bit of uncertainty there, but it's lots and lots of evidence that we provide in Colorado, and it's just a very good job, especially when compared to other places around the country. So I will just briefly give you a sense for some of the results from really the bigger audit was in 2022 versus the one that we just did. There were a couple of different rounds, but most counties were done very quickly. There were 2.5 million ballots cast. That actually means there were 3.5 million individual pieces of paper, because some ballots were multiple pieces of paper. And we compared 233,000 votes, multiple votes on each ballot, with the original result of that that was reported for that ballot. And that's just completely off the scale when you look at the rest of the country. And it's very helpful in getting data about every contest. Not all of the contests achieved a risk limit. That's the way the law is written here. But unlike most states, we produce evidence for all the contests. And that's, I'm very proud of Colorado for running their election in a way that allows them to do that. I just want to briefly talk about a presentation that I put in the chat that links to my full presentation that will explain this more. But Matt and I gave a presentation nearly a year ago talking about to an election verification network, talking about even though we're doing such a great job, there are things that we could do better. And here's just a brief list of some of the things that that we think we could do better and that we're working on. And we actually gave this presentation, I did, to the Secretary of State's bipartisan group a month ago, and this was received well, I think, both by the Department of State and the clerks and some of the skeptics in the room who you know, might be in a place where they would prefer a different clerk. They would prefer to understand more about the process. And it was received well, and I hope that we continue to move in this direction to make things even clearer to the public. And I'll just close by talking about this overall concept of evidence-based elections. And again, it gets back to some of the stuff that Matt was talking about and that we work on with clerks around the state. Voter registration databases are something that people often talk about. And the way that we do registration in the states means that, you know, you aren't required and guaranteed to eliminate your registration in one state or one county before moving to another one. So there's perennial questions about that. And there are things that we can do to try to increase the evidence that we produce and the confidence that we generate around the databases. That's the same thing true with signature verification. We've made a lot of progress there. And there's a very interesting thing that we're going to be working on, I hope, to provide yet another layer and way of feeling confident that the paper ballots are being properly secured and nobody can get in and mess with them before the audit and things like that. So again, the message I'm trying to send is that we're doing a great job in Colorado, and we recognize that it's legitimate for people to have questions, and we try to help those people understand things, both by showing them what we're doing now and by showing them that we think there are things that we can continue to improve. So thank you.
Thanks, Neal. Great information. I like the term evidence-based elections.
Yeah, there's a paper on that topic that I can put in the chat also that really just lays out wanting evidence about everything with elections, and then kind of everybody's on the same page. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Linda Hutchinson, the chair of LWVCO's News Access and Literacy Task Force and a member of LWV Larimer County. Linda and her team have gathered lots of valuable information and resources to help you recognize mis and disinformation and increase critical thinking skills. Linda.
Unmute. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that? Hopefully somebody nod. Can you see that? Okay. All right. So this is how you get to the news literacy page. You go to the League of Women Voters of Colorado homepage and click on this, the carousel at the top. Tools for spotting mis and disinformation, and it will take you to this page, which is the news literacy page. This is a page of the Larimer County League of Women Voters, but it's maintained by the News Access and Literacy Task Force. And we want to make sure that everyone knows that you are perfectly welcome to use this link to this from your website to this web page, or copy this information. We just want to share it with everybody. So we are not stingy, and we want you to just feel free to use it. This web page is not intended to tell you which news sources, specific news sources to read. It's intended to give you the tools to become news literate, News literacy being the ability to judge the credibility or trustworthiness of news and recognize mis and disinformation. Because we are the League of Women Voters and we believe in the informed and active participation of citizens in government, and you cannot be informed unless you are news literate. So I'll just show you a few of the tools on here, tools for spotting mis and disinformation. This is what I regard as the quick start card for news literacy. It compares bogus news to responsible news. Bogus news uses emotional wording or name calling and misleading headlines, where responsible news will use a neutral tone. Bogus news, go into the articles and check the links and the sources. Often bogus news, you cannot verify the links and sources. If it's responsible news, you can go to the sources and they will check out. That's called lateral reading. Another part of lateral reading is to go in and check out the author and the author's affiliation. Don't go down into the rabbit hole. That will just take you into more and more disinformation. Use your lateral reading skills and check the sources, the author's affiliation. And then often bogus news, if it's old news, it's not news. It should be new firsthand reporting. So, and then below that, we have our favorite tools. One of our best ones, I think, is the News Literacy Project. It has rumor review, tips for spotting mis and disinformation, the quizzes. The quizzes I always find are a humbling experience. I can't tell you how many times I don't pass them. And then we have the, I want to alert everybody to the fact that Monday begins National News Literacy Week. And the news, it's sponsored by the News Literacy Project and Scripps, and they have 5 webinars that you can attend. This one is in person, but I think they will have a live stream. Some of them are for educators and students, and 2 appear to be for everyone. And the focus this year is on local news. So, and then Ad Fontes, that's of course one of our favorites with the media bias chart. You have, they do require subscription, but you can sign up for the newsletter and you will get their, they call it, what do they call it? Hold on a minute. They call it the static gallery media bias chart. And it comes out, I don't know, this one is, I think, from August, but they're fun to look at. The axis, the vertical axis is veracity, news value, and reliability. And the top is media, the bias from the left to the right. Nobody appears to be smack in the middle at the very top, but then you get down to the extreme, like InfoWars is not reliable on the right, and Wonkat is not reliable on the left. And my husband subscribed to Wonkat. Wait till I get him. And okay, the next one is the League of, that I'd like to point out, is the League of Women Voters and the National Institute for Civil Discourse. They offer it's like a weekly scheduling of news literacy, civil discourse, civics education, election integrity. Just, and you can sign up here and you'll get it every Saturday morning in your email. So you can know what webinars are available. And then, of course, we have Fake News Marketplace with Dr. McBurnett. I highly recommend everybody, if you didn't see this, go watch it. And if you don't like any of the movies on TV tonight, go watch that. It's very entertaining. He's really engaging and made you think about the marketplace and supply and demand, and there is a demand for disinformation because we keep reading it. And then we have featured articles, podcasts, and webinars. This is one of the best ones, I think. It's more about lateral reading. It's Charlie Warzel, Don't Go Down the Rabbit Hole. He recommends using the SIFT strategy. If you see something that you're skeptical about, stop, investigate the source, look through the news sources you tend to believe and see if they're covering that, and go back and trace the references in the article. Don't go down the rabbit hole. And then the last thing is we have legislation. The league was supported House Bill 21-1103, implementing media literacy in school, and the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Linda. Great information. Please share far and wide. It is always available on our website. Okay, our next segment is on reproductive health. We just celebrated the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and we're coming up on the second anniversary of the Dobbs decision. With us today is Karen Middleton, the president of Cobalt Advocates, who will tell us about the campaign to constitutionally codify abortion rights in Colorado, and while dispelling a myth or two. Karen, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Beth, and good morning, everyone, and or good day, everyone. At least one person's in Florida, and I just want to thank the last presenters, because accurate elections is something that's very important to us as well. So that was a nice segue. I do have a screen I want to share, and I just want to make sure you know how these are. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. So thank you very much for giving me time to visit with you today. I am here and I run Cobalt, and I am part of the ballot measure campaign called Coloradans for Protecting Reproductive Freedom. We are part of the Colorado Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition. This coalition has been around for many years, so we're a bit of a well-oiled machine. And fun fact, we started working on this ballot measure all the way back in the middle of 2021. My partners in this work include ACLU, Calor, Interfaith Alliance, New Era Colorado, Planned Parenthood, and Progress Now Colorado. Our coalition has a strong track record. So if you're thinking about running ballot measures and you think of us, we're very good at defeating ballot measures. And I know I've been in this position more than 10 years. I've had more than one person say, can we please run a proactive ballot measure and not just be voting no all the time? Well, here's your moment if that's something you've been thinking about. I think it's really important to remember that prior to Dobbs, and we've all seen the level of enthusiasm in voters seeking to protect reproductive health care access and abortion rights in states all around us, particularly in states that might surprise you. And we here in Colorado were able to defeat back in 2020 a 22-week abortion ban. And so we know we've had deep conversations with voters across Colorado who, even when faced with a ballot measure that the other side thought they had it, it would be easy, our voters have said, government out of my business. And this has been consistent over many years. And we also saw that it was bipartisan. So we had more people vote for our ballot measure than voted for either of the two top candidates at the time, the presidency and one of the US Senate races. And we had 3 prior attempts at the ballot. So just a little history there. And what we're going for is to ensure abortion access for all, regardless of insurance status, in our Constitution. So this does a couple of things. One, it takes an old insurance coverage ban for abortion care out of the Constitution. So that's a repeal, removes language. Right now, over 1 million Coloradans have insurance plans that the government is prohibited from covering So for example, I used to be a state legislator. I had Kaiser then, I have Kaiser now. As a state legislator working for the state, my healthcare coverage could not pay for an abortion. So where you work depends on the quality of care and what kind of choices you make. And we think taking government out of that equation and not having that barrier is going to be very important. And it recognizes the right to abortion in the Constitution to push back against any future efforts of politicians to try to restrict it. Here is the text. We spent 6 months working on this text. We worked with legal counsel and we worked with advocacy organizations both in Colorado and across the country. And I'm gonna read it because I think it's meaningful. It's also short, which is nice if you've done a lot of abortion ballot or a lot of ballot measure work. Sorry. The right to abortion is hereby recognized. Government shall not deny, impede, or discriminate against the exercise of that right, including prohibiting health insurance coverage for abortion. And just to set the context, and then I'll give you a few more details, and then we can go into some of those myths. We're a national leader in this work. We have seen an increase in people having to come to Colorado as the place of last resort. But one of the things to remember is because we have never had the kinds of restrictions that other states have had, we were already accustomed to handling patients that were coming across state lines and coming to Colorado. So what we've been able to do is increase care and help people who are really desperate. And I'm sure you've seen news stories, people driving. I mean, there are many. One example was a woman who had an ectopic pregnancy and was in Texas and they could not care for her. So she put her spouse and children in the car and drove 19 hours. And I can still tell you that the doctor who was waiting for her was so traumatized thinking about how many, if you've ever driven between Texas and Colorado, you're on desolate highways with no access to care, and had that pregnancy ruptured, she could have had a very bad outcome. But those are the kinds of experiences. So we're a leader in providing healthcare, and we're a leader in leading the way and being able to take care of people. And this just shows that we've seen a huge increase in the number of people that are coming to Colorado. Protecting that right for the long haul, given the political realities we're seeing across the country, we think is very important. It's a winning issue. So we think that this will actually be a focal point for this upcoming election. I know I've seen plenty of League of Women Voters petition gatherers out and in the community, and we're seeing very strong and positive support. So we know this is a really good year to do this, and the time is right, and the community is ready for this. Now, this is going to give you, I'm going to just talk briefly about where we are. We have already started signature gathering, as you know. We launch our campaign on Monday, with the official campaign launch being coming right up. We will also have campaign events all over the state, and we're heavy into signature collection. Our goal is to turn in 185,000 signatures this spring by the third week in April is the absolute deadline. So we hope to do it sooner. And something to remember is because it's constitutional, we are gathering signatures, 2% of signatures, or about 3,000 from each state Senate district. So again, being statewide, we were talking at the beginning of this about the fact that you as members can participate from all across the state. We need everyone across the state who's working on this. And then that, to me, that's sort of the bright line, is getting it on the ballot, and then we'll begin to run a broader campaign going into the fall. Just said all of those things. So I want to tell you just a touch about the research and what we're doing. One is in most campaigns, you have an electoral body of research. What do I need to say, or what does it need to accomplish? And is it popular, and will voters approve it? So we have electoral research, but we also have deep research into communities of interest, because we're not just a flash in the pan, we're a longstanding coalition, and we want to make sure that we're not just talking to voters now, but we're really building community over the long haul. So we're relying on data from the Colorado Latino Policy Agenda, and we're also investing in Black Insights is the name of a polling firm, and we are doing research specifically into the Black or African American community, and we will learn from that data not only what makes this ballot issue successful in communities of color, but also what long-term we can do to really broaden our expertise and understanding and expand the communities that are working in this issue. And so we're really trying to continue with deep research over time. And this is just a quick survey. A lot of people think, oh, Latino community, Catholic, probably doesn't support this. That's not true. If you look at this, we see, and this is a survey that's been done over several years, and this is the latest. So they've been building research over a couple of years, and what they see is support for protecting reproductive health and abortion rights outnumbers support for banning or limiting abortion. And then down below, more people are interested in voting and making abortion rights stronger and allowing that we pay for abortion care with state insurance programs. So we see not just winning by sheer numbers, but also depth and community, and we think that's important as well. So these are some things that I would, just some key messages, and hopefully this gets at some of the myths or debunking, and I'd be happy to take any questions. One is, and you heard me doing it, is that we're really emphasizing using the word abortion. We lead with values, but we don't need to avoid the subject at hand. One thing that's really, I've really observed is we have run against personhood measures and all sorts of things. And we started talking with Colorado voters out the door back in 2008. So they're not really surprised when we use that language. And even though, regardless of what part of the state you're in, we're still continuing to see a move toward it's okay to say the word abortion. We ask folks that are thinking about the issue to lead with empathy. You think about if they or their family members or loved ones were in the situation and needed care. And everyone has a personal story, or there's possibly something you've seen on television or read in the paper. If you, there was the recent case in Texas where a court prevented a woman who had not only an issue with her pregnancy, but the potential of losing her own life if she didn't access abortion care, and she was turned away and had to leave a state. Those sorts of stories really bring empathy to a situation. We do also make this about healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. It's safe, proven, and necessary. And when I hear doctors who talk about our work, they say, I'm taking care of a person who is pregnant, and I am talking to them about all the options. What these draconian laws are trying to do is let me only provide some of the information to someone who might need more information. And when you think about that, what other area of healthcare is that happening right now? I mean, what if you were told, I have a cancer diagnosis, but I can't talk about chemotherapy because I'm not allowed to by the state? You have to think about how invasive this is. We also really want to emphasize abortion is a thoughtful decision. It's not a spur of the moment form of birth control. A lot of people, when someone says, oh, someone needs to get an abortion, you might have that image of the 19-year-old whoopsie, or the teen, or the, just someone who was, quote, being irresponsible. That's not really the case. We've seen data time and time again that I think it's half the pregnancies in the United States are unplanned, for one reason or another. And most people who have abortions, 6 out of 10, already have children. They know what decision they're making, and it is not usually it's a decision that's been made with care and been made with the information they've received, and they've really thought about what it means for their family. Oftentimes it's an economic decision. We also really talk about this being a values conversation: government control and overreach versus freedom and privacy. This is a winning message from one edge of Colorado to the other. Government out of my business, that this is not the decision of anyone but you, your family, your healthcare provider, your faith. And in fact, when we've asked this question over the years, and I've got polling going back to 2014, if you ask about government interference or a politician making a decision, that is very strongly opposed by Coloradoan voters. And I've seen really just staggering numbers. So this is a popular message about, you get to control your own decisions. Reminding voters that we get to make personal health care decisions, reminding them that this is freedom from government, and soothing concerns, this notion of unlimited abortion. I haven't found many people making abortion a casual decision. And not only that, if you live in a banned state, you're not only trying to make a difficult decision, it might be difficult for you, it might not, it depends on your situation, but to then have, and think about it, any other healthcare situation, you have to get on a plane, you have to drive hours and hours, you have to buy a bus ticket, you have to take care of work, you have to take care of other kids. People are not just making a fly-by-night decision, and really, I don't see people treating this as irresponsibly, which I think is the narrative you hear from folks that are oversimplifying the situation. This is how to get involved, and I'm going to drop this link in the chat if you want to go to one of our gatherings. There are gatherings all week long. We're in Fort Collins, we're in Boulder, we're in Colorado Springs, we're in Greeley. So if you'd like to participate, I do have information for you, and I'll drop that link in the chat. And then let me get this off your, I'll take this down and I can share that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Thanks, Karen. We do have one question, but before I get there, I would like to say that before the rally at noon on Monday, we are opening up our office, which is across the street from the Capitol. Come on in at 10:30, make a sign for the rally. We'll have supplies to make signs and, lots of donuts and coffee and tea. So I will put the registration link in the chat box. I hope to see some of you from the metro area there. Now, one question we have is, would the federal prohibition on abortion coverage for Medicaid enrollees supersede any Colorado changes?
No, but the reverse is true. If we don't repeal this, if we don't take that out, if we're able to successfully overturn Hyde, that federal ban in Congress, which would just be passing a law and not anything more extreme, we would still have our state prohibition. The only way to remove it is to take it to the ballot. So federal dollars wouldn't be able to be used, but state dollars would be able to be used.
What's your response to folks who say, I don't want my tax dollars paying for abortion?
Thank you. It is, so one, it's a matter of fairness, and when you think about it, public employees who access health insurance through their employer are often paying a portion. To sort of decide which part of that is state dollars is probably small. And there's no fiscal impact in this ballot measure. If you think about ballot measures where it says, shall the state of Colorado spend X, Y, and Z, that number is 0 for state and local dollars in the ballot measure as written. So we don't believe it will have a fiscal impact. And it really is, the state is deciding whose insurance covers what, which is a little bit of a different conversation. So hopefully centering it on that is a good way to pivot, and also that there's no fiscal impact.
Right. How can I make my home available for families entering the state for women's health care?
I appreciate the offer, but we do not, we don't support having homestays. There are a couple of reasons for that. The pace and timing and complexity of navigating patients to come to Colorado is already difficult. It kind of goes two ways. One, we don't know who we're inviting into your home because we're helping anyone from anywhere. Two, we think about having a medical procedure and then going and staying with a stranger for a night. It just doesn't feel comfortable to any of us involved. And so we think it's a much safer option for everyone and more confidential to arrange for a hotel stay and arrange for transportation. And so we always appreciate it, but we would encourage you to support provide financial support or make a gift in lieu of considering opening your home. But again, grateful. Now somebody's talking about question about gun control versus abortion legislation, freedom from governmental control. I think that the difference is that freedom about decisions that involve your body versus what you get to do with something that's I mean, the thing is it's inside of you, right? And if you think of that, that's a different calculation. And so I would always say that it's freedom from government control on what you do to your person is a really big defining line in my mind. And hopefully that's a good way to respond to that question.
Is there a shortage of abortion providers in Colorado?
You know, the folks that provide abortion care in Colorado have been busier than usual, and it's created a reproductive health care crisis for all sorts of care because people are a lot of people aren't able to get other forms of care in the states they're living in, so they're coming here. But what we're also seeing is a real response. People are moving to Colorado. There have been doctors who've relocated from states that weren't safe. We have advanced practice nurses and nurse midwives who can assist in providing abortion care. And we have other options like medication abortion that are beginning to ease that pressure on the system. So we're okay. We actually think that the best thing for our providers is to get other states to undo the egregious bans, and really for the national, our federal legislators in the next session, fingers crossed, should look at protecting abortion care in the law. There is already a bill that's been proposed and has been moving over the last few years.
And yes, a national ban would negate this ballot initiative. Isn't that correct, Karen?
Yes, although I do not think it's possible for them to pass something like that. But yes, it's an issue.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't disagree that gun control is a public safety issue. It's just it's just a personal space. And then Guttmacher is an excellent resource for statistics. It is the place that we always send press to get consistent information. The Society for Family Planning has a new report called We Count that is also quite good and is another one that we pay attention to. And the Center for Reproductive Rights is the gold standard for where the state of laws are across the 50 states. And they have a chart that they maintain. It used to say, what if Roe fell? And now it says something like, you know, we all know Roe fell, so here's what's happening. And then, are there any gestational limits? There are not. What we find is that people make those decisions. We continue to see, and really the fact of the matter is 89% of abortions take place in the first trimester, and it's a very small number of abortions that occur later in pregnancy. We don't really emphasize that because it shouldn't be anyone's business. And in fact, there's new polling by Perry Undum that says that gestational limits are not popular among voters who are seeing the impact when we have cases that come into the public eye. So we're seeing a real pushback of these false narratives of, well, this case or that case. We, you know, for each of us, and knowing people who've lost pregnancies later in pregnancy or have had to end a pregnancy for their own life, the life of that baby, or other new information that's been heartbreaking. It's not our business. And we like to just reframe it as, well, I would never want to make that decision for you, Beth. Would you want to make that decision for me? Like, I get real personal about that. I would never want you to tell me how to treat my cancer or whether I'm continuing a pregnancy and so forth. And I think that really resonates with people. And I'll tell you, I had conversations all over the state about abortion later in pregnancy, from one end to the other, rural communities, ranchers. I kept thinking I was going to run into someone who was vehemently opposed, and by and large, they were with us, including a lot of people I know, former Republican elected officials who had, not felt that way in the past and said, hell no, I'm not going to restrict that. So that's feedback that I would share just from my work.
Great. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
we're
Thank you
real-
all so much. Appreciate you
Yeah.
covering it. I see a lot of active volunteers and people I've been seeing in the meeting today. So appreciate your time and have a good rest of your day. And I hope to see many of you Monday or one of the upcoming launches.
Great. Thanks so much. We're really motivated to get this across the finish line.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Okay. Our next two speakers in the reproductive health segment sadly had last-minute scheduling conflicts. So we will be working with them to get the information that they would have shared to you. One is the reproductive team at Denver Health. They are now, due to the dire need, offering abortion care. And we want to bring in the team to tell us how they made that decision. Also, we had planned to have the Colorado Maternal Mortality Review Committee talk about their report that was released last fall on Colorado's skyrocketing maternal mortality rates, especially amongst people of color. We want to know why this is happening and what's being done about that. We'll continue to work to get this presentation on our calendar so that you all can learn alongside us. Next up is Senator Tony Exum. Senator Exum, are you here? I don't see you on the list of participants yet. No. Okay. I think we will pivot in that case and hope that he comes in just a little bit. Kyle, are you willing to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this worked
Great.
out well
Thanks so
that,
much.
that I got on. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. So next we will talk about how many people living in incarceration are eligible to vote. Our partners at the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition are working on a bill to ensure that inmates have access to registration and ballots while incarcerated. Kyle Giddings, the Civic Engagement Coordinator with CCJRC's Vote with Conviction program, will tell us more. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. The League of Women Voters has been a great supporter of our efforts in the Denver County jails, Arapahoe County jails, and you guys have been doing some great work across the state in halfway houses and in jails, getting individuals who are just as involved registered to vote for years, and we really appreciate all your support and the work you guys are doing across the state and the nation in this issue. Yeah, we are very excited to be running a piece of legislation this year that would mandate a in-person voting event in every single county jail and detention center in the state of Colorado. It would be the first we would be the first in the nation to do this. Illinois allows individuals, jails to hold in-person voting events, but it doesn't require them to. Our bill would require the jails to do it. On average, what we've discovered is that during an election, there's about anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 eligible voters incarcerated pre-trial or misdemeanor sentence that are eligible to vote in Colorado. And so we dug into the data, try to figure out how many of these individuals are actually gaining access to the ballot. And so in 2022, there was 4,428 individuals who were eligible to vote in Colorado while they were incarcerated, and only 4% of them were actually able to cast a ballot. And that's just unacceptable because democracy doesn't end at the gates of a jail. If anything, that's when democracy begins for many of these individuals, because this is the first time for many of them that they're interacting directly with elected officials, an elected DA, and duly retained judge, an elected sheriff. And so the individuals that are closest to the problem are the closest to the solution. And so it's really important for us at CCGRC, and I think, and I know this is an issue close to the League of Women Voters, that these people's voices be heard. And so our bill would do several things beyond just requiring individuals to, or jails to hold in-person voting events. It would also require the jails to allow candidate information and ballot initiative information into the jails. I'm sure if any of you are working in jail right now, you understand it is not easy to even get a League of Women Voters survey into the jails right now. We submitted a survey, and we are a 501c3, and we're like, hey, this is just related to the issues for the Denver mayor's race. And we got denied because we were told we were too partisan. So yeah, makes no sense to us, but city attorneys are city attorneys, and it is what it is. So we are putting into this bill requiring them to allow major party candidates and nonpartisan organization ballot or candidate surveys, any of that kind of information into the jails. That way, individuals are able to educate themselves, advocate for what they want when they vote, and be able to make an educated vote. We did a survey back in 2023 of justice-involved people and confined voters inside of the Denver County Jail and the Downtown Detention Center, and asked them, what are the main reasons why you don't vote? And what are the reasons why you do vote? And the number one reason we kept hearing over and over again, and we continue to hear every time we're in there to do voter registration, is that I just don't know enough about what I'm voting for. I don't know enough about the candidates. I don't know enough about the ballot issues, and I want to know more. So this is something that we're going to work really hard to make sure is included in this. And so there's that. And another big part that we're working on the fine tuning of right now, the bill should be introduced Monday or Tuesday. Drafting was kind of blown up by the special session. So drafting is all over the place with everyone's legislation. But our bill should be introduced Monday or Tuesday. But something that's going to be really important in this legislation that I'm really, really excited for is that this bill will likely be wrapped into the new Jails Oversight Committee. So what this does is that the Jail Oversight Committee will be able to develop standards that how elections should be run inside of a jail. That way it is a universal standard for all of Colorado for how elections will be run. The people that sit on this committee are DAs, public defenders, sheriffs, as well as community organizers that represent incarcerated people across the state. So it's a diverse group of people developing these standards. And if something goes wrong, there's no more red tape of trying to file a complaint and then going through all the processes. If something goes wrong related to these standards, there's a direct path from the complaint straight to the Attorney General's office. So if individuals' civil rights are being violated and they're being denied the ballot, we have a direct path to make sure it's rectified and the issue is taken care of, which is really, really great, because for so long, individuals who've been stuck in the criminal justice system and have experienced, and right now the criminal justice system, as I'm sure many of you are aware, has become a form of warehousing our brothers and sisters who are struggling with housing, who are struggling with addiction or mental health. And so the civil rights issues around that are already a big struggle within the justice system. And to put voting on top of that, violations are happening everywhere. So we're going to make sure that there's a new accountability for at least voting in this bill. So our sponsors are Senator Julie Gonzalez in the Senate, and in the House, we just got a sponsor. He's the new representative from House District 32, Representative, gosh, I forget his name every single time, and I feel awful. This literally happened yesterday. Lovely fellow, though. Great guy, young, progressive, environmentalist lawyer. I can remember his whole bio. His name completely leaves my brain every single time. But we're super excited for this legislation. And with that, CCGRC has developed some educational stuff that I'm happy to share with everyone. I will send it over to Ms. Hendricks here, and she can distribute it to everyone that's on this call. One is a Know Your Rights palm card. So we developed a palm card with CCGRC that explains your eligibility rights as an incarcerated individual. It gives examples of when you are eligible while you're incarcerated and when you're not eligible when you're incarcerated, because there's some weird fine nuances in the law that can be kind of confusing. Like one being, in Colorado, if you're on felony probation, you can vote, except for if you're serving 30 days inside of a prison or a jail for that probation. So if you're in jail for 30 days during an election while serving felony probation, you're technically not eligible to vote during that time. But if you just look at the law, you're like, oh, I'm eligible to vote. But we're trying to make sure people are educated about that so they don't accidentally commit another crime by just trying to be a good citizen. So little nuances like that. So the palm card on the front gives examples of when you are and are not eligible. And then on the back is a literal copy of the law. That way individuals can just read it, try to understand it. And if they have questions, there are phone numbers on the bottom so they can call us and we can answer any questions they have. So we'll send that to you guys. We have it in English and Spanish. So you guys can take it, distribute it in public, or if you're in the jails or halfway houses, you can give it out there. Wherever you are in community, please feel free to hand it out. Another thing we've developed is a basic civic education course. It's a little packet that is kind of a top to bottom, just brief education about how our government works, what are the powers of the different branches, what are the powers of the different offices, also some brief definitions of the different political parties, as well as explanations of the Civil Rights Movement and the Voting Rights Act that we distribute right now inside of the jails and in community at parole offices and stuff like that. I'll also give that out to, and if you guys want physical copies, I'll happily provide those for you. I'll drop my information in the chat so everyone can reach out to me and I'll happily get things organized and get stuff to everybody. Yes, Rootenell. Someone wrote Evie Hudak, our dear former senator. Thank you. I live in Arvada, so shout out to Arvada humans. So yeah, super excited for this legislation. Colorado is the gold standard for elections, but I'm really excited for this bill because I think this kind of starts helping us push towards being the platinum standard for elections in the United States. Like I said, it's the first in the nation, and it's going to be something that's really going to change the dynamics of how we are able to involve people in our democracy. For so long, individuals with felony convictions on their records or just being involved with the justice system have been just stuck under this cloud of Jim Crow, thinking that they're just not eligible to vote and that they will never be eligible to vote again. Every day we go into the jails and we hear it over and over and over again. We go into our community partners who we work with often, and we run into people who work there that don't think they're eligible to vote because they have a felony conviction. And no matter how much education we do, there's still this heavy cloud of Jim Crow that just reigns over our nation. So every single thing we can do a little bit at a time to start taking down that cloud is powerful and is important. So I'm happy to answer any questions I can. I'll scroll through the chat here. Yes. Yeah, no bill number yet. As soon as we have a bill number, we're going to do a whole press release, so you guys will probably see it come through. Kyle, can I get information as we go into the Larimer jail next week? Absolutely. Yes, I will. I'm going to drop my email right now.
If this bill passes, Kyle, will it take effect for the 2024 election?
That is how it's written currently, is that it will be, individuals will be able to vote in the presidential election from their county jail. We're really excited that Jeffco is actually about to launch their in-person voting in their jail. We're working really close with Amanda Gonzalez over there, the county clerk. You guys might have heard of her. She's kind of been around. We're really excited to be working with her to get this started in Jefferson County. They're going to do in-person voting for the presidential primary. So we're really excited. What other states have done this? Okay, so it's complicated. So Illinois, Chicago, Cook County Jail has an in-person voting event, and they have one other little county that does it, but no statewide voting events. California has tried to pass this legislation in the past, but it kind of died in committee and through like political mayhem. Massachusetts is trying to start it up, but it hasn't really taken off. Washington, D.C., it does do in-person voting in their jails, but as you guys know, they have refranchised everyone in Washington, D.C., but Washington, D.C. doesn't have any prisons. So if you are sentenced to a prison sentence in Washington, D.C., you're actually shipped out of state to go serve your prison sentence. And so then it becomes really difficult for them to figure out where you are, for you to request a ballot, and it becomes incredibly complicated. Delaware is currently suing. We're working with the ACLU. One of my really good friends, Andrew Bernstadt, is the voting rights fellow at the ACLU in Delaware, is suing right now the state of Delaware because they don't allow incarcerated folks who are eligible to receive mail-in ballots, and they don't want to allow in-person voting. So they are doing a lawsuit right now to require in-person voting events because their constitution is very specific to who can get mail-in ballots. If you think elections are bad in like some states, you do a deep dive into Delaware, it's real bad out there. So they're suing right now, but right now, there's no state that actually does statewide in-person jail-based voting. So if we pass this legislation, which we're feeling really good about, the Secretary of State has let us know that they are going to be in support of our bill and will be working with us to get it passed. The Clerks Association is right on the cusp. We're working with them to finish some final details to get them on board as well. And the Sheriff's Association, we're almost there with them too. So if we can get everyone on board, we're going to get this passed, and we're going to get it done. And so we will be the very first state to ever have the requirement for in-person voting events in every single jail. Let's see. Yeah, we did a new edition of the Palm Cards late last year. So I will definitely send that over to Ms. Hendricks so that way it gets out to everybody. Yeah, no name or number yet on the bill. Thanks for dropping the link. Yeah, so Colorado has never fully disenfranchised anyone from voting. How the law is written right now is that as long as you're not serving a term of confinement, aka inside of a jail or a prison for a felony sentence, you're eligible to vote. So there's also one other little nuance that floats around here is if you are in a halfway house on inmate status, which there's not a lot of people on inmate status at a halfway house. What inmate status means is if you are just kind of wrapping up the last bits of your sentence and you haven't been officially released onto parole, but they were putting you into a halfway house to start your reintegration to society pretty much. That's when you're on inmate status. People that are on inmate status tend to only be on inmate status for like a very short amount of time. So if you're in halfway houses, you're probably not going to run into a ton of them. But if you do run into them, they are not eligible to vote technically yet. Another part that the Secretary of State asked us to do is to fix that, because an individual on inmate status in a halfway house has all the rights of an individual that's on parole and is eligible to vote. So they can go stay in community on the weekends at their family's houses or their loved ones' houses. They have a job. They have the ability to go to church. They have the ability to go do everything an individual that has the right to vote who's on parole. So there's no reason why that person shouldn't be able to vote just because their status is different within the judicial system. the Secretary of State is really wanting us to clarify that if someone is in community and is becoming a part of community again, that they should be able to vote, because that is one of the pillars of reintegration, is becoming an active citizen again. And so we're working on that. We haven't quite figured out the language, different titles, different parts of the law to figure out. So, are these inmates considered residents of the physical location or their incarceration? No. And yes. So it's very confusing. So Colorado, we were able to eliminate state level prison gerrymandering. So individuals are not gerrymandered into their prisons for state legislature elections, that kind of stuff, but they still are for congressional districts. For some reason, we couldn't get them across the finish line for congressional districts. We're going to be working on that in 10 years when redistricting happens again. But in Colorado, you can't register to vote at the jail. So when we go in to do voter registration, or if you guys are going in to do voter registration, they cannot register to vote while at the jail. They can have their ballot sent to the jail. So if they want to update their voter registration form to have their mail-in ballots sent to them at the jail, they can absolutely do that. Usually jails have a PO box that have all the mail sent to and such. So feel free to get that from like the Larimer County Jail, saw that in there. Every jail has a PO box that they can have the mail sent to, but do not have them register at the jail. They definitely want to have an address in community or cross streets if they're unhoused. Or like in Denver, we use the St. Francis Center or a homeless shelter out in community that allows people to receive mail out there. It's definitely worth doing some digging before going into a jail to figure out what are the local like charitable organizations that allow individuals to receive mail there. Because that is an excellent place to have someone registered to vote then. It allows them to have a connection to the community that they feel like they belong to. But in the end, they can always register at the cross streets that they feel like they spend a lot of time around. So can vote if on parole and probation and not incarcerated in jail or prison. Trickier and halfway house work release can be an active DOC status. Yeah, so can vote while you're on parole in Colorado. That changed in 2019. Probation has been around for a while. You can vote while you're on probation. You can vote while incarcerated in a jail if you're serving a misdemeanor or you're there or on pretrial. No one in prisons is going to be eligible to vote, because if you're in a prison, you're serving a felony sentence. No one is serving a misdemeanor sentence in a prison. If they are serving a misdemeanor, it's in partnership with a felony. So you're never going to end up in a prison serving just a misdemeanor sentence. Yeah, trickier is the halfway house because it's just funky. We did ask the Secretary of State's rules manager related to like work release or someone on home confinement. And we're trying to get an official like ruling on their website, but the rules manager, Caleb Thornton, did reach out to us when we asked him, hey, can these individuals vote if they are on home confinement or work release? And he says yes, because their status in the CDOC, which is like the Department of Corrections, like status deciding website, does not disqualify them. That is what they rely on to determine the status of eligibility. And they are not put on a status that is a disqualifying status. And so he believes they are eligible, and that is their official opinion. So we're trying to get them to officially publish that, because that's what we tell people. But until it's like officially on their website, it's like we try to be very careful with that, obviously. Yeah, so wouldn't include prisons. That's once we get the jail-based voting figured out. The next goal is let's reenfranchise everyone. No one should ever lose the right to vote. So let's prove we can do jail-based voting well, and let's go up from there. Yeah. So, yeah. So I will, like I said, I will send out the information to Ms. Hendricks, and she can distribute through this email list, I'm sure, from registration or whatever. Or please feel free to reach out directly to me through email. I'm happy to do trainings about emotional intelligence stuff, how to interact with individuals that are incarcerated or justice involved people just in general. Happy to do any sort of training that is needed related to jail-based voting. Me and my colleague Jessamine Ross will be around town a lot. So if you need us to come up to you or out to you or around the state, please let us know. We're happy to do so. We'll go to local chapters, do whatever is needed done to make sure our justice involved folks have their voices heard. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. This has been great. Like I said, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. I appreciate the time and you guys having me on.
Thanks so much, Kyle.
Yeah.
We really appreciate your work and your partnership, and we will certainly be in touch. I can already hear the requests for more presentations from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
So next up is Senator Tony Exum, serving District 11 in El Paso County. Senator Exum has had a schedule change. He's joining us through the phone, and he is the chair of the Local Government and Housing Committee. He's here to talk to us about the plans, especially around housing. Senator Exum, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you so much. We appreciate your efforts to join us.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Now, what can you tell us about the priorities of the Housing Committee for the upcoming session?
Yeah, we've had a few last minute changes. I became chair a few weeks ago, so we're making some adjustments to that. We'll have our regular caucus huddles every Monday at 1 o'clock, between 1 and 1:30, to talk about the bills that are coming to the committee that week. But our goal is to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have a fair hearing, those that are for the bill and those that are against. We have approximately between the House and Senate, probably about a dozen to 20 housing bills that have been introduced. Some will start in the House, some will start in the Senate. I don't have that full list. I can tell you a couple of bills that I'm working on that will be coming before our committee. One is not allowing counties to impose occupancy limits unless it's related to health or safety. What we found in the past is that some landlords and some folks are imposing occupancy limits on folks that they don't want to be in their property. So the bill just basically says you cannot impose those occupancy limits unless it's related to health or safety. And then another bill that I'm working on, we haven't put out we haven't introduced it yet because we're making a few changes, and that's the warranty of habitability bill. And that's just a couple of things. It's going to codify the responsibilities of landlords and the responsibilities of tenants. The problem that we've been having is that a landlord or a tenant or a renter files not a complaint, but puts in a order for something to be repaired, whether it's a window or an appliance. If the appliance is owned by the landlord, some all appliances aren't owned by the landlord. Some are owned by the tenants, but it talks about a reasonable amount of time to take care of that from the time the complaint or the request comes in to completion. And it's pretty much saying that the good actors are taking care of their properties, they're taking care of their tenants. The bad actors aren't taking care of their properties and aren't taking care of their tenants. But the bill talks about the responsibilities of landlords and tenants. So it's not the onus doesn't always fall on the owner of the property or the landlord. There's some onus on the tenants too, that wherever you're renting, you need to take care of the place. And then if there's something wrong, you need to report that right away to give the landlord or the owner opportunity to make those repairs. And then I know we have a number of bills. Some of you are probably familiar with the land use bill that didn't get passed. It was a very large bill, very complicated bill. And my understanding that there's a number of legislators that have taken bits and pieces of that huge bill, and we'll probably be hearing parts of that. And also, we did some in our special session, we did some property tax relief just for the year 2023. And so we're going to be doing there's going to be some additional bills coming to help relieve property taxes going forward. And so I know the League of Women Voters are very astute about following the housing bills, especially that are coming to our committee. So I would just encourage you to keep an eye on our website when those bills are introduced. It's leg.colorado.gov, and you can find out when those bills are being introduced, what committee they're assigned to, and then you can kind of look at the bill to see what the contents are. And then if there's a particular bill or a couple of bills that you're interested in that's coming to committee that you have some questions on, you can feel free to reach out to me or my office to get some additional information. If I have some information, I'll be able to share that with you. A lot of times it's best to reach out to those bill sponsors. They're a little bit more connected to the bill than the committee. We look at the bills that are coming to our committee on a weekly basis. We get fact sheets, and in our huddles, we talk about, we allow the bill sponsors to come in. We give them, a few minutes to talk about their bill and ask any questions from the committee, and that way the committee hearing goes a little smoother, because sometimes the questions are already asked, and the bill sponsors have an idea of any parts of the bill that any committee member is struggling with. And of course, those questions are re-asked during the committee hearing, because that's those hearings are recorded, so that's very important to do that. So that's just kind of a brief overview. Is there any specific questions that any of your members may have?
Does anyone have a question for Senator Exum? Our Legislative Action Committee did vote yesterday to support House Bill 1007, the occupancy restriction bill. So we will be lobbying in support of that, sir.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's an interesting bill. What I look at the bill, it's and this is just my personal opinion on it. I think it's discriminatory.
We agree.
No other way to look at that.
Yes, we see 1007 very much as an equity bill.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you for your work there. Does anyone
Absolutely
have
appreciate it.
any other questions for Senator Exum? Okay. Sir, thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate all that you did to make it here, and we really appreciate your dedicated service to our beautiful state. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Beth. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Now we're going to take care. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to take a break until 12 o'clock. And so please do what you need to do until 12 o'clock, and we will look forward to seeing you back then. Thank you very much. Welcome back. You know, we have much to be proud of in Colorado. Our great election systems, independent redistricting, and of course our beautiful landscape. But one area of shame is how our state seems to be a leader in mass shootings, starting with Columbine and continuing on through King Soopers and Club Q. Denver's East High School, which is the alma mater of both of my sons, and the current school of Andrea's daughter, has experienced terrifying and heartbreaking gun violence. Now, we got a lot done last session, but there's a lot more to do. And here to tell us about that are two friends from Colorado Ceasefire, President Eileen McCarron and lobbyist Ann McGihon, and also serves on our board of directors. So, Eileen and Ann, thanks for being here. What's coming up?
Oh, so thank you very much. I'm Eileen McCarron, and I've been working on this issue since 1995. To start out, I just wanted to mention we showed a picture of Columbine High School because this year it will be 25 years since that awful massacre that killed 12 students and 1 educator. But to look at Colorado and how it works, next slide, in terms of gun violence, we can look and dealing with it legislatively, we can look at the makeup. On the left-hand column is the governor, and the two right-hand columns are the Senate and the House, and with the proverbial blue and red markings. And as you can see, Colorado had a long history of a Republican-led legislature going back like 40 years that were kind of things were kept in a little more balance by having Democratic governors. But what happens is that in years that we have Democratic House, Senate, and governors are the years we can move gun violence issues of prevention issues. So, and so just to look back at what happened last year, the next slide. So I don't know why the top of the screen is not showing, but anyways, we'll go forward, at least as I see it on my screen. Oh, there it is. It's just, it was my screen, sorry. So in 2023, last year, we did advance 6 measures on gun reforms. The ERPO, the waiting period, which has been sued, a minimum purchase age of 21. It's under an injunction. The Rocky Mountain gun owners had sued, and also the ghost gun ban. And just, you probably read in the news recently, the Rocky Mountain gun owners sued on that. The important one on gun industry liability, we'd had an immunity system since back in, in the 80s, and it was made pretty strong in 2000. And then domestic violence in municipal courts will be handled like it is in the state and the district and county courts. But I put the bear at the bottom to just say Bruin, because the Bruin lawsuit, excuse me, the Bruin court decision of 2022 is kind of hanging its head and burying its teeth on anything we do. So we always have to be cognizant in that. In some cases, just go forward as best we can. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about bills that have been introduced already, and there haven't been very many. The first is Senate Bill 3, and this one will allow CBI to do investigations. Despite the I in CBI, they aren't really allowed to do investigations on issues unless raised or requested by a local law enforcement. This will allow them to do investigations on firearms without a request from a local law enforcement. And particularly it is aimed at the lie and try. That is, if person lies about their background when they apply to buy a gun and they're found that they failed the background check, that actually is a criminal activity to do that, but very few people are prosecuted. So this bill will allow CBI to take cases with regards to illegal firearm activities, and also it funds state prosecutors to work with federal prosecutors, because some of the federal laws, particularly on possession of weapons by a previous offender, are stronger. It allocates 1.6 million for all of that, and there's just another side thing. It isn't the main issue. Is it allows CBI to maybe address other illegal activities going on, such as the gun dealers who are not enforcing the high capacity magazine ban and are blatantly selling these magazines all over the state. Next slide. So the other bill, which is not really a gun bill, but it just is one that kind of irks me, is House Bill 1064, that would allow Colorado to have the Gadsden flag on license plates. And the reason I put it in here is that the Rocky Mountain gun owners often are flying that flag at their events. It actually has a good history going back to the Revolutionary War, but it is a symbol that's now been appropriated by insurrectionists and white supremacists. And you can see at the Capitol January 6th event, there were people there waving the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. Okay. Another one that was just introduced last week, Senate Bill 57, has worker suicide prevention agricultural. It's largely aimed at rural areas, and the problem they have is that suicide rates are much higher in rural areas. That's nationally about 2 times as high, and we in Colorado are a high suicide state. We're the 6th highest in the country. Largely it's going to be public awareness program and a crisis support hotline, and it'll additionally collect data. And the next slide. The bad bills introduced. This is blank. This is unusual. We have normally the bad bills that we call the gun rights, pro-gun rights bills, get introduced pretty quickly, and there have been none this year. Often we get the stand your ground, which has been like, this would be the 18th year that we'd fight that one, and permitless concealed carry, and another one is guns in school. So I'm going to turn it over to Ann to talk about bills that are in the whatever you copper that are being worked on and probably be introduced in the next several weeks. Ann?
Hi, everybody. The bill we've been working on actually since 2019 is standardizing concealed carry classes to require for it started because there some of the classes were online, some of them had open book exams, and the existing statute requires that a concealed carry holder demonstrate competence with a handgun. And that really wasn't being done. So the new bill will have an 8-hour class, instructions about firearm safety, instructions about existing laws, state and federal, as well. There's already attack avoidance and conflict resolution, but this will require a live fire exercise. So that one, we're happy to see finally coming to fruition. The next one is safe spaces. This one, sensitive places, I mean. This one, the sensitive places protects, as you can see from the list here, from parks to churches and homeless shelters. We're very excited to see that university campuses are on there and state and local government meetings. So perhaps we won't have legislators having handguns fall out of their pockets during committee meetings. This one may get more limited, though. Vehicle safe storage is a priority for Ceasefire because there have been 814 guns stolen from vehicles already in Denver from January through mid-November. We know that those guns are going to youth and prohibited buyers. You may recall at the beginning of last session, one representative had 2 firearms stolen from his car. So this will require that unattended guns be locked in a not visible car locker. Then gun dealer permitting, we've been hoping to see this happen for at least a few years. We have these fantastic laws about safe storage, about large capacity magazines, but we have no way to enforce them absent having gun dealer permitting. It require all gun dealers, even those who have a federal license, to get a state permit. And there would be employee training on straw purchaser recognition, inspections to make sure that they are complying with existing state laws, employee background checks, and require physical security of guns for safer storage over when the shop is closed. So we're very excited about that. We're not sure what its prospects are from the governor's office. And then gun owner liability insurance is sort of a copy of a San Jose bill. This would require insurance for any accidental discharge of a firearm and require that the gun owner show the insurance. We have some comments on that, not sure when that will be coming along. And then the assault weapons ban, there are a number of groups working on that bill together. We're learning that because of some recent court decisions and the Bruin case, we may be rewriting that bill. Otherwise, it had a filing deadline of next Friday. So we'll see how that comes out in the wash. And then we have a bill on social media disclosures and reporting, which for purposes of our group forbids the sale, promotion, or advertising of illicit substances or firearms. Again, this is aimed at juveniles having access to firearms, which in East High School, we found out last year was deadly. And then finally, we are aware of a draft of a bill around school security officers. We haven't really had an opportunity to see it, so we can't give you many more details. But we started this year with a list of Eileen, 16 bills we thought we were going to have. So it's narrowed down a little bit, and a lot of legislators are saying, what are the priorities? We Ceasefire have 5 priorities, 4 of which are either introduced or in draft. But we're hoping to see one more bill around making gun shows compliant with existing state law. So, okay, Evie, we don't know. Would the school security officers be SROs? We don't know.
I suspect they're not including SROs in that. I think it's these particularly teachers who are, I think that's the biggest concern, are teachers who are armed. But a law has allowed schools to contract with employees, school employees, to be armed in the schools, and they have it contractually that they're a school security officer, which is a term that's not really defined in law. But I don't think it's aimed at SROs at all.
And we are happy to share the slides. Beth, shall we just get them to you?
Yes, please.
Okie doke. Kate, I agree that it's a little disconcerting when a legislator has a gun fall out of their pocket. And I'm very happy that everyone has to go through a security check at legislators.
Except the legislators.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, the legislator who had his gun stolen from his car is aware of the bill and around vehicle safe storage. So that's kind of fun.
He actually told the sponsor that he thinks he'll never live that down.
And Maud, you're asking, any thought of trying to get around the Bruin decision by saying no restrictions on any firearms or ammunition at least as old as 1776 or any exact replicas of those, but will restrict anything newer? We try.
I think that's kind of the reverse of Thomas's opinion on the in the Bruin decision. His was like, you can't have any new laws that weren't there in the early part of this country's history.
One of the things we found out in last year's bills is there is a lot of history of restrictions on guns in the West. As you recall, a lot of towns had people had requirements that guns be deposited with the sheriff or outside of town. And so we have some advantages here in the West. It's kind of fun.
Well, with one exception, he puts his date at like 1876, I think, or 1868, the time of the 14th Amendment, when I think it was 1868. And a lot of the West stuff, unfortunately, came after that. I mean, we'd like to say that's old and it's historical, but whether it meets the very pro-gun rights justices' scrutiny, who knows?
That's right.
But they're
going to do this very quickly. Stay tuned. Next Friday is a bill filing deadline for the second bills. And I think it was referenced earlier, because of the special session, some of the drafting got a little behind. So the House at least extended the bill filing deadline for second bills. And the Senate's is that Monday still, Eileen? I think so. Yeah. So next week should see a bunch of new bills. That'll be great. So, oh yes. Beth DeHaven says, sign up for Ceasefire newsletters, so informative. And Eileen writes them, and they are not only informative, they only come out when there's something to inform you about. They're not like a weekly thing, right, Eileen?
Correct. Just generally, it's 1 or 2 times a month, and a little more often, like when things are kicking and happening, particularly during the legislative session. I put our email, our website address there, and on that you can go and sign up to be on the newsletter. And we've gone over, so I don't want to rob from other people's time.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time and information and expertise. Be in touch and let us know how we can help.
Oh, read Eileen's newsletters.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, now we're moving in-house. Our action and advocacy team leaders, Kathy Wilson and Maud Nerol, who are the co-directors of Action and Advocacy, and Andrea Wilkins, our legislative liaison, will discuss the 2024 legislative session, which began last week, and LWVCO's priorities. But before we get started, I'd like to thank some people, including these 3 amazing women from whom you're about to hear. Their dedication and commitment to democracy and healthy government is truly astounding. Thanks to each of our speakers for sharing their expertise today. Thanks to the LWVCO Board of Directors, several of whom you've seen today, for their continual support and balance. Thanks to Jane Dunk and Katina Frierson, our staffers, who make everything happen. And again, to Andrea Wilkins for being our face at the Capitol. Now, Kathy, Maude, Andrea, your floor.
Thank you, Beth. I'm Andrea Wilkins, the legislative liaison for the State League, as Beth mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. I have to apologize for sounding so scratchy today. I have got a cold that I can't shake, but hopefully I can keep that in check. But Kathy and Maude are on standby if I go into a coughing fit, and I'm sure they'll be piping in with a lot of other comments and information for you all as we work through our slides here. But I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Hang on just one second until I get this situated. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this okay?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, now that things have kicked off and action is really starting to heat up, we wanted to kind of give you an overview of some of the priorities that we are looking towards, both as a league and specifically the State League Legislative Action Committee, but also priorities that are being contemplated within the legislature and how we anticipate plugging into those efforts. I think as many, if not all of you know, the 2024 legislative session started on January 10th. So we haven't actually been in session for too long, but we've already seen the introduction of over 150 bills, most of them really on the first day. So it's kind of the fire hose effect that we always see at the start of a new session. It has slowed a little bit, but as Eileen and Ann mentioned, we are expecting another wave soon. So the legislature will be keeping our citizen lobbyists very busy as we start to see the numbers increase. We typically will see around somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 bills a session. It's really way more than the Legislative Action Committee can or even should cover. We obviously only follow legislation that aligns with our organizational positions, and we prioritize based on things that we consider to be a significant impact to those priorities. So in the end, we typically end up following somewhere in the neighborhood, I would say, of around 100, 130 bills. But it really kind of covers a broad range of things that align with those LWVCO positions, ranging from, well, actually, I think this is my slides. I'm jumping ahead, talking about LAC a little more than I intended to on this slide. So I will pause with that and mention that some of the legislation that we have seen really kind of comprise a lot of the bulk of the bills that have been introduced so far have come from the interim committees, the 2023 interim committees. There were a total of 54 bills that were recommended by those committees and approved for introduction by the Legislative Council Committee. So we've seen a lot of those. Some are still to come, but they also address a broad range of things, ranging from a lot of mental health issues, specifically a focus on youth mental health, which we know is really a crisis issue in Colorado and a priority for both the state and the league to see some action and some solutions in that area. So we are very interested in a lot of the legislation that's coming out there. There's been a lot of child welfare related legislation that's come out of those early recommendations, some substance use, prevention and treatment bills, really kind of running the gamut of topics, some tax measures, And then, of course, a big focus on natural resources protection and conservation, specifically water conservation and wildfire mitigation issues. We are pleased that we have got strong teams in all of these areas to be following this legislation and advocating for things that really kind of rise to that priority level for LWVCO. I do want to mention a little bit about the December revenue forecast because it really provides the fiscal context that we're working within. This is the December forecast was the most current fiscal numbers or first fiscal estimates that the General Assembly works with as they go in, start to develop legislation, consider appropriations, and kind of look forward to the budgeting process that will begin in March. There will be another update in March, shortly before the long bill is introduced, which will provide updated figures to sort of guide things a little more closely. But for right now, the fourth quarter forecast, which was provided to the Joint Budget Committee on December 20th, is predicting a pretty stable economic outlook in Colorado, which is good news. Though, despite that, I think there's still a lot of cautioning that we're hearing from policymakers about exercising caution in our spending. And Maude, I see you have a hand raised. Since you are one of our fiscal experts, please feel free to jump in here.
No, I was just going to do a translation that the long bill is the major spending bill that has most of the state spending. It governs most of the state spending.
Right.
And that also, out of over $1 billion of additional money, 23 million is like a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket of what can be spent on new programs after taking care of inflation and caseload increase, other issues that just from growth.
Right, and that's a figure that you'll see in that fourth bullet point there, the reference to the 23 million that's available. That's the prediction now. We may see some adjustment there, but it'll probably stay somewhat in that neighborhood. But the estimate that there's approximately 23 million to spend on new programs after the existing spending obligations are met. It sounds like a lot, but it really isn't when you look at the budget as a whole. There's a lot of existing obligations that have to be met. And part of the reason for caution is that members of the General Assembly are very concerned about inflation and increased demand for services, which will mean more expenses for existing services for the state to actually operate those. So it's just something to be aware of when we're thinking about policy that creates new programs. We in LAC, we do try and kind of keep in mind sort of the fiscal backdrop that they're working with that discretionary funding, because it gives you a sense of what's likely to pass, what's feasible, and what's something that may have to be considered down the road. I mentioned the concern about inflation. That's something that we've been hearing about for a while now. It's remained a concern throughout the country, of course, and Colorado is no exception. During the revenue forecast presentation to the JBC, it was noted that the biggest driver of inflation in Colorado is the high cost of housing, which I wanted to specifically mention because it really ties into the fact that there is so much priority placed on finding a solution to the housing crisis in Colorado and providing solutions to develop more affordable housing so we can start to get at some of the cost of living and inflation concerns that are so prevalent right now. And then I mentioned that the next forecast will be out in March. We typically try and pay close attention to that and share some information through our social media channels and on our website. So be on the lookout for that. And then, of course, those that are interested can always listen to that either in person by attending the JBC meeting in person, or you can access the hearing remotely if you're inclined to do so. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the legislative priorities that have been voiced explicitly by the majority. I think everyone's aware, the majority party in Colorado for the last few years has been the Democrats. And we're seeing kind of a continuation of some of the priorities that have been cited over the past few years. Again, affordable housing. That's something that I think we really see cited as a priority issue, throughout state government, regardless of whether it's coming from the minority party or the majority party, the governor's office. There's a real concern about inflation and the cost of living, and affordable housing is such a key part of that. Another priority that has been cited by the majority party is full education funding, and importantly, the elimination of the budget stabilization factor. For those of you that follow education funding, you know that this is a super big deal. For those that don't, the budget stabilization factor is sort of an accounting trick that the state has employed has basically resulted in education not being funded at the constitutionally required level in many, many years now. But there's been a real effort to try and pay that down and return to a full funding situation. And we are finally at the point where this budget cycle, there's commitment and ability to get that done. So that is something that we are very excited about. Of course, education funding always remains a challenge, but it is exciting progress here. And Kathy, as our education lead in LAC, please jump in.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. The elimination of the budget stabilization factor is good. That's been hanging around since 2008 and the recession at that point. But even with getting rid of the BS factor, we will be at 1989 school funding levels. So there's a way to go, and getting the money to our schools that they need.
Right. That is such a good point, Kathy. It's an ongoing conversation. Education funding comprises a really big chunk of the state budget, but there's just so much catch up to be done there. And there's also a lot of discussion around equitable funding and what needs to happen potentially with the school finance formula to ensure equitable funding around the state. So it really is just a very complicated issue. And something that our Legislative Action Committee will be following closely as the session progresses.
I'm going to say one more thing. There hopefully will be a task force that's going to look into exactly how much it costs to educate our children in our public schools. So I think once our legislators have that information, they'll better be able to decide on the funding that's going to go to our districts.
Thank you for that, Kathy. Yeah, that would be fantastic. And definitely something we'll be monitoring. Some of the other priorities that that have been mentioned is career and workforce training, particularly with concern about addressing the workforce shortages in high demand fields where we just currently don't have the workforce to fully staff up. Protection and conservation of Colorado's water, is always a very important concern, and certainly a priority of the legislature. Rural economic development, another significant priority. And I've bolded this last point because you'll see as we flip through the next couple of slides that this is something, civility. The concept of civility in our public discourse and in the General Assembly specifically has been something that was called out as a need and a goal by both the majority and minority parties and the governor's office. I think we have all seen the erosion in this area. It's really concerning, and it's something that is recognized fully by our state legislators and the governor. So hopefully we will start to see, improvements in this area. It's difficult to develop sound public policy if we can't talk to each other and disagree in a respectful way. So now kind of shifting to the legislative priorities of the minority party. You'll see some commonality, but we see some differences in focus areas as well. Cost of living, again, really kind of a concern across the board. Property tax relief is something that's been on the minds of a lot of elected officials and the public in general, of course, and that's something that's been cited as a priority for addressing this session. Minority leadership has also identified school choice and crime reduction, safer communities as priorities that they would like to see invested in and addressed. There's also been mention, which to some extent maybe goes along kind of with the concern about civility and decorum, about ensuring that the minority voice is heard. We know that last session there was some contentious moments, and discussion was not always carried out in the most collaborative way. Minority leadership had indicated that they are very interested in both ensuring that their voices within the legislature are heard and that voices of their community are heard. Kind of, like I said, sort of tie into that concern over civility and decorum, which was also mentioned by the leadership of the minority party. And then kind of to capture some of the points that were made and some of the areas highlighted in the governor's State of the State address that occurred last week. Again, we see kind of rising to the top the affordable housing issue. Tied to that is transit accessibility and trying to create transit accessible communities to kind of promote density, promote more affordable housing, help people access jobs, that sort of thing. So we will definitely be seeing a lot of high priority legislation there. Again, mention of crime prevention, safe communities, full education funding, kind of echoing, the really insightful remarks that we heard Eileen and Ann mention. Gun violence prevention was mentioned, and that's a huge priority issue for the league, something that is just very pressing. So we're very excited to engage in advocacy over that. Healthcare savings is another big concern. I think everyone probably is in agreement that access to care and affordability of care has for too long been a big concern throughout Colorado and throughout the country. So there's a real desire to see some solutions there. Clean energy was cited as a distinct priority. The governor made note that Colorado is on track to meet 80% of our clean energy goals by 2030. We're really excited to see the legislation come out in the clean energy realm. We're seeing a little bit of that now, additional legislation to, address our management of our natural resources, climate and environment. We've got a really active and strong team within our Legislative Action Committee that will be following a lot of bills. So we're really lucky to have so much expertise and capacity there. One of the areas that, is sort of interesting to point out, income tax rate reduction is something that the governor has mentioned a desire to see addressed, which is interesting in the sense that it does kind of cause a break with the rest of his party, or at least some members of his party. So we'll see where that goes. We have seen some legislation introduced here kind of addressing this issue, but there's sure to be more debate as the session gets further underway. And then again, the mention about civility in public discourse and just the ability and interest in disagreeing better. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself earlier, but now I'm excited to turn to just some information that we want to share on the Legislative Action Committee. The work that our LIC lobbyists bring to the State League is so key to our mission and so important to furthering our positions that it's just a super exciting group to work with, and we're extremely thankful for their contributions. We began our biweekly meetings on January 19th. So we actually just had our first meeting yesterday. But we've really dove right in, and you can kind of see here we've got a list of bills that we have already deliberated on, voted on, and taken a position on. And you'll see from the slide that, and I think probably most people are pretty well aware that our citizen lobbyists focus on a broad range of issues that really span the scope of our LWVCO positions, ranging from government, voting in elections, climate and natural resources, and then of course a host of social policy issues. You can kind of see from the list here that for the most part, the legislation that we've considered so far are things that we support. There was some mention earlier about support of our support of the prohibition on residential occupancy limits. We've looked at we actually assigned a strongly support to the Independent Ethics Commission jurisdiction. That commission, the jurisdiction of the commission is being expanded through this legislation to additionally cover school boards and metro districts, and our local government group is very involved in the metro districts discussion that's taking place within the state. So we're very supportive of seeing some oversight and the jurisdiction extended to metro districts as well. We are supporting senior housing tax support, a committee that's designed to study the compensation of state elected officials. Many of you probably know that our legislators are paid a woefully low salary, particularly when you consider the very, very long hours that they work. And although Colorado is a part-time legislature, we meet January through May, they really are working throughout the year. So, we really see this as an equity issue, not just in terms of fair pay, but also, if you aren't paying people a fair wage for the work they're doing, you're likely only going to see people running for office that have got other sources of support or independent means of support that allow them to be able to work for a low wage. And then it's taking a lot of people out of the pool of potential candidates that just can't afford to do that. So we see this as an important equity issue. We've supported Gender Affirming Care, a study to kind of take a look at the provider shortage or capacity in Colorado, the Universal Healthcare Payment System study, which would require the Colorado School of Public Health to look at model legislation and conduct a study on what it would take or assess the feasibility of transitioning to a universal healthcare payment system in Colorado. So this study would be sort of a first step or potentially a roadmap in looking at what implementation of such a system could look like. We've supported a bill that's addressing content of materials in libraries. I know this is something that's been an issue that's studied by the News Access and Literacy Task Force, and Kathy and our other education lobbyists have been looking at this. Kathy, I don't know if you want to jump in and maybe say a little bit about this one.
I do. This is definitely has a Jedi component about it, but I want to let everybody know that this bill is going to go to committee on Monday, January 29th. There's going to be a rally on the west steps of the Capitol at noon that day before the 1:30 meeting, committee meeting, and everybody is invited to go to that. This bill, when you hear about this bill in the media, they're going to refer to it instead of content of materials and libraries, which really doesn't say a whole lot, but they're going to be referring to the Freedom to Read bill. And so this gives very definite policy and practices regarding book banning and materials banning in public schools and public libraries. So I invite you to the Capitol on the 29th for that rally. People will be holding up banned books and banners and such to try to get people across the state to be contacting their legislators about this.
Thank you, Kathy. And then you'll also see that we have opposed one bill so far, nuclear energy being classified as a clean energy source. That is something that we've taken an opposition stance to. And then we've got a couple of bills that are actually pending LAC vote. We kind of just touched on them a little bit, but we'll be doing some follow-up there to secure votes on the bill that would reduce the state income tax rate, and then a racial equity study that would look at the impacts and potential corrective action around systemic racism. Maud, please jump in.
There's been a little bit in the chat. We have LWVCO has consistently opposed cutting the state income tax rate, and consistently there have been bills, because consistently there have been bills to cut in the sessions to cut the income tax rate. And I anticipate that we will once again oppose this. The revenue group opposes it. The revenue group within the Legislative Action Committee opposes it, and it just needs to go out for a vote of the full Legislative Action Committee. We operate at this point a little bit like the legislature. We have topic committees that do a deep dive and make recommendations to the Legislative Action Committee as a whole, because we have well over 30 members in the whole group. And then the group as a whole votes.
Yeah, that increased, the increased size of the LAC over the last couple of years has been something that's very exciting to us, because it's really given us a lot more capacity and the ability to cover a very wide range of issue areas, you know, just really dive deeply into so many priority areas for the league. So that's been very exciting. And we've got some really great regional representation now too, from local leagues throughout Colorado. So we definitely, you know, have Zoom to thank for that. Everyone getting used to kind of living part of our lives on Zoom has really made that possible. And it's been such a wonderful thing for our policy discussions.
Yes, I think one of the things I want to add to that or emphasize with it is that it gives us a much more well-rounded perspective of how to consider these bills that are coming through. Because previously it used to be that our LAC membership was predominantly, you know, on the Front Range, but now we get the perspective of citizens across, you know, it's our members who are across the state on the Western Slope as well, which really helps our discussions and our understanding.
Yeah, and in fact, our healthcare group within LAC is rich in rural healthcare providers, one of whom lives in Montezuma County, which is as far as away from Denver as you can get and still be in Colorado. So it's and they add a richness, because there are issues in rural healthcare that we just are fortunate enough not to face in the Front Range.
Absolutely. All right. Moving on to I actually I don't know if anyone can hear that chime, but I'm seeing some participants jump on, and I was excited to see Representative Brianna Tacone just join us. So I'm not sure if she's fully logged in yet, but I just want to say hello and extend a welcome to Representative Chatone. All right, kind of continuing. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Please jump in.
Just want to say hello to everybody. Thanks for having me here today. Appreciate the work of the League of Women Voters. I just came back from my town hall. We had a few members of the league there with some petitions to sign. So got some signatures at the town hall, which was great. So I don't know if there's anything you want me to say particularly, but don't want to interrupt your groove here.
Well, thank you, Rep. Tatone. We appreciate you joining us, and that is great news to hear that we got some signatures during the town hall. We're actually just kind of talking a little bit about legislative priorities, some of the bills that the league has already taken a stance on, and then some forthcoming legislation. If there's anything that you'd like to mention, any of your bills that are forthcoming or may have already been introduced that you'd like the league to know about, please jump in.
You do have one on the screen right there. That is one bill that I'm going to be on when it's introduced for the deep fake disclosures. This is a tough area of law because historically, somebody could say anything they want about a candidate, and it was a different thing before deepfakes. Deepfakes are so convincing that you can really ruin a candidate pretty quickly with a deepfake if people catch on and it becomes viral. So we're trying to make sure that any of these kinds of things that are being done have disclosures to people to let them know that this is not the candidate speaking. This is a computer generated thing, or this is a doctored image. I mean, we just saw a colleague that showed us a picture of her at the Super Bowl. And she didn't go to the Super Bowl, but it's an Instagram filter. And it was very convincing. So there's a lot of things that are very easy to get your hands on that can really go in a direction that can be problematic, especially when it comes to elections. I'll be running in the House a Senate bill for a general AI regulation that Senator Robert Rodriguez will be running. And he's been working with a coalition of 20 states to try to come up with uniform policies on the regulation of AI. And the reason for that is because AI has a lot of beneficial uses, but it also has some very dangerous uses. And we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page of what's beneficial and what can be misused. And that's going to help both the company succeed and to make sure that the government can help guide. And I think it's really a partnership that we need to develop as this technology grows, that we continue to regulate with those companies to make sure that we're coming up with the best ways that balance misuse and beneficial use. I've got the right to repair for consumer electronics. I'm not sure if that's something that you're interested in. That builds on the two bills that I've done before with wheelchairs and farm equipment. This will be for all different kinds of electronic equipment, and it'll include your stove and your washing machine and all those things that have become really difficult to fix. So these are pretty important bills. Regulating funeral homes, I'll be running those bills in the House. Youth mental health, youth mental health. That's Senate Bill 7 out of the Senate. Trying to really have a train the trainer kind of program for mental health first aid. The way I view mental health first aid, especially when it comes to young people in schools, is to cast a wide net on the people who may have problems and may be experiencing some kind of mental health crisis. So how do we get more people to be able to recognize those things and get people the help that they need as quickly as possible? That's one of the things that we're trying to do. So I'm just trying to read the questions here. Okay, I guess that's more of a question for you about whether it's a priority or not.
Yeah.
And yes, menstrual. We're working on a menstrual product for schools bill that'll be coming pretty soon, and it's trying to really build on the program we started with the grant program and make sure that all the schools are doing it. There's a bit of a pushback from the schools because they say it's an unfunded mandate. We are giving them money up front. We are having a partnership with private companies to provide the machines, which is the most expensive part. But there should this is something that, you know, if a kid comes to school, they should have everything that they need to succeed in their education, and that includes having these products that they need for their bodily functions. I mean, they supply toilet paper and soap and paper towels and everything else to all the students. They supply food for kids who need food. Why should we not be, you know, helping them out with these things, which has a major impact on performance of menstruators in the classroom as well as attendance. So it's something that we feel is very important, and we want kids who come to school to feel welcome and to feel supported in all the different ways that they need to. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for those remarks, Rep. Titone. It's really great to hear, you know, kind of what's coming down the pipeline there. You know, I think we really agree with the perspective that the access to menstrual supplies in schools is such an important equity issue. Your timing couldn't have been more perfect for you to have jumped in when the deepfakes slide was up. That's definitely something that we are interested in following and you know, participating in, because it really is just such a concerning situation. So just perfect timing that you came in right as we were about to get started on talking about that one.
And just one other food for thought, because this has been an ongoing conversation we've had recently, is that, you know, like this technology could upend democracy as we know it if it's really misused in a really quick timing right before the people go to the ballots. And, you know, the question is, can we impose a really strict penalty on people who do this kind of thing? And it becomes really a battle with the First Amendment. And this is kind of an untested area, but it has been tested a lot of times in the space of somebody saying something about me that was totally untrue. And then what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't even have standing to even say that defamation has even happened, because I'm a public official, and that's kind of how the precedent has been made. So there's a lot of concern about going into an area of law that, you know, if the Supreme Court decides that this is something that is a First Amendment right issue, you know, it was a creative endeavor, you know, and this is something that NBC has reached out to us saying, like, well, what about Saturday Night Live if they're making a parody? And so it's a very, very fine tightrope that we're trying to walk here to make sure that, along with the AI legislation in general, of beneficial use and misuse. And that area right in the middle is where, you know, the argument made by someone trying to misuse is to say, well, I'm just making parody. I mean, that's the excuse. You know, a lot of politicians say, when they're attacking somebody else. And that is a very broad gray area that's up for interpretation of the person making the decision. And it's an area we're trying to thread the needle on.
Absolutely. Well, we absolutely appreciate your comments about the threat that this poses to our democracy, and just really thank you for your work on this, because it is a balancing act that you've got ahead of you on it. But we're excited to participate in this bill, and we will absolutely be following it as it is introduced and moves through the process. I'm going to just flip quickly to the last slide here with forthcoming legislation, so you can all kind of take a look. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen to see if there are any questions for Rep. Titone or for me on any of the other legislation that we've talked about. And then I will get it turned back over to Irene. And then for anybody that doesn't have the contact information for the Action and Advocacy Leadership, we've got a slide for you here that's got email there, so you have easy access to us, and we can share these out so you all have them on hand moving forward. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any questions or discussion. Okay, I'm trying to quickly get caught up on the chat. I see a lot of messages of thanks to you, Rep. Titone, for being here and for your remarks. So I just want to echo that. And I think with that, I will go ahead and turn it back to Irene.
May I make a quick comment?
Sorry, hang on,
Sorry.
Beth, just 1 second, because I don't want to lose Representative Titone to say, wow, your timing was perfect. You jumped in just when we wanted to see you. And then I don't know if the rest of you do realize that Representative Titone is our leader of democracy for this year. And so we're very excited that you are representing sort of that we honor you and you honor us with working with us, and we appreciate it. And thank you again for being part of the league for us. Beth, is that what I was going to step on you about?
Well, that was perfect. Thank you. Yes. I also just wanted to introduce Thalia Oster. She is our newest member of the Action Advocacy Leadership team, and a new member of the board of directors. So Thalia, forgive me for not introducing you earlier.
That's quite all right. I'm new to all this. Thank you. It's a great presentation so far today.
Okay, back to Irene.
Well, thank you. So I want to say, well, it's 1 o'clock. You all hung in there with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Kathy, Maud, Thalia, Andrea. Your work on the legislative action or action and advocacy is remarkable. It's phenomenal. It is overwhelming. It is every word I can think of. You guys are really carrying the water for the membership in the League of Women Voters. So we really appreciate you and thank you. Also want to thank the staff. I think Beth said something a little earlier, but I would like to thank Beth Hendricks. We couldn't do this without you. You have really navigated a positive way for us. You so beautifully articulate our mission and vision to all of us, to all of our partners, to any new members, and we really appreciate you. Thank you. Again, Jane, can't do it without you, Jane Dunk and Katina, that wraps everything up and makes everything in a pretty bow for us. I appreciate that too as well. So, but really, I guess I should thank all of you that are spent your Saturday morning with us. We appreciate it. We need you. We want you. You do understand at the end of all this, boy, we got to step up our game. I think we're capable. I think we are the group that can help our partners and our legislators get the work done. So again, I really say thank you. Thank you very much. Your voice is needed and you are so important. With that said, I'm going to say thank you and stay in touch with us.